The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday, not by mail, not through a lawyer, by courier. The young man stood on the porch for less than 30 seconds before driving away, leaving a thick envelope balanced against a flower pot that hadn't held flowers in years. Margaret Dawson stared at it through the living room window. 34 years in the same house. 34 years of birthdays, arguments, Christmas mornings, leaking roofs, and Sunday dinners. Reduced to an envelope. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she sat in the recliner her husband had always hated and listened to the old grandfather clock tick through another hour, then another. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass. Inside, her marriage ended. The paperwork was simple, brutally simple. Harold wanted a divorce. He had already moved out. He had already hired attorneys. He had already begun a new life with someone 20 years younger. The house had been structured in ways Margaret never understood. His attorneys understood them perfectly. 3 months later, the judge signed the final order. The house went to Harold. The savings were nearly gone after legal fees. We tell stories about people who rarely make headlines but leave a mark on the lives around them. If you enjoy stories like that, subscribe and turn on notifications. And if this story reminded you of someone special, share it in their honor. The retirement she thought they would share disappeared with a signature. At 58 years old, Margaret loaded everything she owned into a rusted pickup truck. 3 boxes of clothes, 2 lamps, a coffee maker, photographs nobody else wanted, and a dog-eared recipe book from her mother. That was it. Her entire life, reduced to the back of a truck. As she drove away from the house for the final time, she didn't cry. The tears had already run out. What frightened her most wasn't losing the marriage. It was the silence that came afterward. The realization that nobody was waiting for her anywhere. No children, no siblings nearby, no close friends. Just miles of highway stretching toward a place she hadn't seen in almost 30 years. A forgotten gas station high in the mountains. A place her father had once owned. A place everyone else had abandoned. And buried inside that station was a mystery that would change everything she believed about the man she thought she knew. But Margaret didn't know that yet. All she knew was that she had nowhere else to go. The mountain road wound through thick pine forests that seemed untouched by time. Clouds drifted low across the ridges. The air grew colder with every mile. By late afternoon, the station finally appeared around the bend. Margaret almost drove past it. The old sign leaned sideways. Several letters had fallen away decades earlier. The fuel pumps stood like rusted monuments. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete. One window was boarded, another was shattered. The entire property looked as though it had been holding its breath for years. Her father had called it Dawson Fuel and Service. Locals had called it the last stop, because after the station there was nothing but mountain roads for 40 miles. Margaret parked, turned off the engine, and sat there. The building seemed smaller than she remembered. When she was a child, it had felt enormous, a kingdom of tools, tires, oil cans, and candy bars. Now it looked tired, old, forgotten. Like her. She stepped out into the cold air. The smell hit her first. Pine trees, rain-soaked earth, old gasoline. Memories. Her father had died 12 years earlier. A heart attack, quick and unexpected. After that, the station closed. Nobody wanted it. Not the bank, not the county, not distant relatives. Eventually, ownership passed through a maze of paperwork until it landed with her. A gift nobody considered valuable. A burden disguised as an inheritance. Margaret unlocked the front door. The hinges groaned. Dust floated through shafts of fading sunlight. The old cash register still sat on the counter. Shelves remained stocked with products that expired years ago. A calendar hung on the wall. June. Nobody had turned the page. For a long moment, she simply stood there, listening. The silence felt different inside the station. Not empty, waiting. As evening settled over the mountains, she carried in her boxes. There was a small apartment above the garage bays. The stairs creaked beneath every step. The room smelled stale. A mouse darted behind the cabinet. The mattress was ancient. The refrigerator didn't work. The ceiling leaked near one corner. Margaret sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted, defeated, alone. Outside, darkness swallowed the mountain road. A few distant headlights passed below, then nothing. The station seemed suspended between worlds, not part of the town below, not part of the wilderness above, just existing, forgotten. At midnight, unable to sleep, Margaret wandered downstairs carrying a flashlight. She moved through the service garage, past tool cabinets, past shelves lined with dusty parts, past workbenches covered in decades of grime. Then she noticed something strange. One cabinet near the back wall was locked. Every other cabinet stood open. This one remained secured. Heavy steel, old brass lock. She frowned. Her father had never locked anything. Not tools, not money, not supplies, nothing. Yet this cabinet had remained sealed for 12 years. Margaret knelt beside it. The lock was coated with dust, untouched, waiting, and scratched in the metal beside the handle were 3 words she had never seen before. For the road. Margaret stared at them. A chill moved through her, because she suddenly realized something. The mystery wasn't the station. It wasn't why her father had kept this cabinet locked. The mystery was that she had spent 58 years believing she knew the man she raised, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure she had known him at all.